Hi there. So this is either going to really work out well, or I'm going to get this completely wrong. This is my first ever YouTube live. So I am just learning how to do this for the very first time. What I probably should have done was take some kind of a course, but I haven't. I just thought I'd dive in and give this a go. Just press a few buttons and see how we get on. Do you like my amazing background that's behind me? um, So here's the thing. I produced a video. It was my 7 biggest property investment tips. And so what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd just have a little talk through some of those tips, maybe look at some of those different ideas, just see if anyone's got any questions about them. So if you haven't seen that video already, if you just go to my channel and if you just look for that last video, which is, as I say, my 7 biggest property investment tips, it would be brilliant if you could have a little look at that sometime and drop any comments that you may have on there. But actually, I can see we've got a few people coming in here. So we've got Oasis. Hi there, Scott, Jeffrey. It's brilliant to have you on. As I say, this is my first ever YouTube live. I have no idea how this is going to go, but I just wanted to give it a bit of a try, if that's okay. So, as I say, I produced this video today. The way I normally kind of put content out there is I spend a lot of time kind of crafting these videos because that I sort of put out onto my YouTube channel, and I'm quite comfortable in doing that now. But going live is really quite intimidating, isn't it? Anyway, I'm waffling. So the 7 tips, the 7 biggest tips I want to sort of share with you. Can I just sort of see, has anyone actually watching this now, has anyone actually watched that video yet by any chance? It was only released a couple of hours ago. If you have, maybe you can just drop a little comment onto the chat box there. If you've watched it. If you haven't watched it, that's absolutely fine. We're going to talk through them now. But if you have, just drop a little comment on there just to let me know. So let's dive into this. I had these 7 big tips. Now, what I actually had, I went down a list of about 40 different video ideas that I've thought up that kind of included a little tip. And I thought, well, let's go down this list and let's see if I can pull out 1 or 2 or 3 that I thought were actually really quite important, and maybe not your normal run-of-the-mill type tips that you would see out there. And so I came up with these 7 different ideas, really. So let's run down these. The first one that I actually shared was the idea that your own home could actually be considered an investment property. Now, I know that that's often poo-pooed, for want of a better phrase. People often don't see why you might consider that. But actually, I've made some really good money from buying properties and adding value in some way. And there are some really good advantages to doing that. One of the biggest of which is actually from a tax standpoint. Now, I have to make it clear, I'm not a tax advisor or an accountant. You do need to go and speak to your own tax advisor or accountant and get their advice, not mine on this. But I can say that my experience was there were some really huge tax advantages when I started to sort of build on the plot, for example, being the really obvious one. But the other big one is actually the fact that you've got time on your side. So if you move into a property, you've got time and you can sort of play the long game, if that makes sense. So one of the things I used to do was I used to go in and I would sort of I would make sure that all of the neighbors were kind of on board with what I had in mind. And I'd get them all round, I'd show them all the plans, and we'd sort of look at it and make sure that everybody was kind of happy before I actually went to planning. And quite often, for one reason or another, maybe it wouldn't go through. But ultimately, bringing everybody on board and playing that longer game and maybe having to go to appeal if that was what was necessary meant that I could live in this property and also add some substantial value in some way. And you could do things like, for example, maybe take the house and split it in 2 vertically. You could maybe take it and split it horizontally and convert it into flats. Or as I say, one of the biggest things that I encourage people to do is to look for properties with really big gardens, or ideally maybe a kind of corner plot where you can perhaps, there's maybe a side road access that if you look down the side road, there's a big long fence, kind of goes on forever. And maybe you can kind of get in on the back of the garden. Maybe have a chat to next door and get into their garden as well, obviously making it worth their while financially, and maybe get 2 or 3 or 4 properties on there. So playing that long-term game by buying places where there's real potential to add some substantial value in some way, I think is a really good idea, and I think it's something that we should all be doing. So yeah, I mean, on one of the examples that I shared on the video, I actually made £100,000, and this was actually not actually building the thing. This was basically just getting planning. So it's really worth considering, in addition to actually doing other sort of property investments and developments as you go through your sort of property investing journey. So let's move on to number 2, which is this is one that I've really thought long and hard about, because it isn't perhaps a really obvious one, and it's the idea that we should walk away from deals if they simply don't stack up for us. Now, the truth is that I have looked at goodness knows how many properties over the years, and sometimes you get really excited about what you're actually seeing, but ultimately, if the numbers don't stack up for you, if there's some real reason why it doesn't work for you, you should walk away. And sometimes that's really difficult to do, especially if you're kind of emotionally invested in the deal and you maybe built up a bit of a relationship, or you've had a chat to the estate agent. I mean, you built up a relationship with the seller in particular, and maybe they got some challenges and you're trying to help them in some way. So I think that having the guts really to walk away from a deal is actually sometimes more difficult than jumping in and actually just buying it, if that makes sense. Ultimately, it's about making that decision with your head rather than with your heart. And I always really encourage people just to simply look at the numbers. Does it stack up? Does it work financially? And if the numbers dictate that, yes, it's a really good deal, do the deal. If they don't, as I say, you should be walking away. Before I carry on, can I just ask you, is the sound coming through okay on this first ever live video? If it is, perhaps you can just drop a comment on the box there. I'd really appreciate it. Scott's got down here, yes, I have, but I think that was in relation to my question earlier, wasn't it, as to whether anyone's actually watched the video already. So if the sound's coming through okay, can you just drop down a yes into the comments box? Thanks, Scott. That's brilliant. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to my be pessimistic tip. I'm naturally a fairly pessimistic guy. But the truth is, when you're talking to estate agents in particular, they will often really try to, and I don't mean to be to speak in any bad way about estate agents. It's just my experience. They're obviously there to sell the property. They work on behalf of the seller, don't they? And that's absolutely fine. However, these are skilled salespeople, and so sometimes trying to keep that pessimistic hat on is actually quite challenging, because they're showing you all the really exciting aspects of what you can or can't do with the property. But you need to be pessimistic, because ultimately it's your money, isn't it? It's your money that's actually going into this deal. So we need to look at 3 things. We need to look at pessimistically, your buying costs. What is it actually going to cost you to actually acquire and by holding it? I mean, if you're borrowing the money, which you probably will be doing so, there's going to be cost associated with that borrowing, isn't there? So look at all of the different borrowing and holding and refurbishment costs in addition to the cost of actually selling that property. So that might include, obviously, estate agents' fees. Legal fees are going to be in there as well, aren't they? You're also going to have maybe some staging furniture, which is one thing that we do. So you've got to factor in all of these costs and be really pessimistic about the numbers. And if the numbers still stack, do the deal. So on the pessimistic front, also, I mentioned in my video about the fact that interest rates, I believe, it's pretty obvious they're on the floor at the moment, aren't they? They're only going to be going in one direction. They're going to be going up. So work it out as if the interest rate is considerably higher than where it's going to be. I always sort of try to base it on around the 6% mark. Does the deal actually still stack up if interest rates move up to 6%? And on this subject, I'm really encouraging people to get out there now and secure really good mortgage deals. Go and speak to your independent mortgage broker, somebody with access to the whole of the market, because they're going to be the people that can get you the best deals. And now is the time to do that. TJE, hello. Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you. Listine, that's brilliant. It's great to have you on board. I've just realized. No, that's okay. We are still live. That's no problem. So, yeah, and also factor in voids on the pessimistic front. In my experience, lots of people don't actually take voids into consideration. And of course, you're going to have voids. So I usually factor in about 10% for voids. And I think that's a realistic number. In reality, I often don't get voids in properties. Usually there's some maintenance costs, but I kind of allow an additional sort of 5 to 10% for maintenance on top of voids as well. By the way, if you've got any questions, by all means, drop them into the comments box and I'll get to those in a minute if that's okay. Keep in mind, I am a complete newbie to all this live stuff. I find the whole process really intimidating. So, but if you have got any questions, drop them into the chat box in a minute and I'll come on to them in a moment if that's okay. I want to try and help some people tonight if I can. So my next tip was to do with education. And I wanted to emphasize I wasn't necessarily talking about any of my educational products. I mean, I do a course, which you may be aware of, which is the Online Property Masterclass, but I wasn't necessarily referring to that. Education is so important, I think, in this property investing world of ours, because the truth is, it can give you a real edge. I know so many property people who spend their time going on to Rightmove and they're searching for your everybody's doing that. Everybody's looking for that same type of property, aren't they? And I think that getting a little bit of property-based education in whatever form you choose to get that in gives you some real angle, it gives you a real edge over the competition. Because there are so many ways that you can construct and put together brilliant deals for highly motivated sellers. Specifically, that's where I tend to focus my energy on trying to seek out truly motivated sellers, people that don't just want to sell, they need to sell. And I'm trying my best to come up with a solution, an ethical win-win solution that works really well for those sellers. Well, a bit of basic education on the property front can give you an angle. It can enable you to go in there with a kind of toolbox. I hate that phrase, but that kind of toolbox of potential solutions that you can offer sellers. So that comes through education. Yes, I've got an online property masterclass program. You might also want to check out my completely free, I forget the link. I think it's yourfirst4houses.com/mini course. If you go there, I've got well, I was going to say brilliant, but that sounds really arrogant. I've got a mini course which will teach you how to invest in property without having to put lots of your own money into the deals. So I think that's really worth checking that out. And as I say, it's completely free. But if it's not there, read books. There's lots of really good property books out there. Watch podcasts or listen to podcasts. Obviously, go and look out. There's some really good suppliers of YouTube video content. Hopefully, my stuff's quite good. I hope that you find that beneficial. But there are other really good people out there who are producing really top-end YouTube content that's designed to help property people. So get yourself educated. So that you can get out there and start putting together better deals that really focus on helping sellers that are motivated and put together. Fantastic course, Stephen. Oh, thank you. That's brilliant. That's really kind of you. I will have a question at the end about corporate lets. Love your content, DJs. So to the point and useful. Listen, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. So let's move on to the next one. And as I say, if you've got any questions there, just feel free to drop them into the chat box. I'm going to try to come on to them in a moment. But I must emphasize here, I do not have the answers to all questions, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. If there aren't any questions that you've got that I can answer, then obviously I'm going to try to help you if I can here. I then talked about, in terms of my next big tip, which is tip number 5, was location. Now, everyone kind of turns off when we talk about location, because it's such an overused phrase, isn't it? But I didn't want to go down that kind of, yes, you've got to look for the perfect house in the perfect location type of thing. I wanted to kind of get across the fact that when I talk about location, I'm wanting it to kind of knit in with the strategy that you're following, or the strategy that you're wanting to follow. So what I actually mean by that, and I shared in the video these examples, what I actually mean by that is, if your strategy is, for example, holiday lets, and this is something that my wife and myself are really interested in. So if you've got a holiday let and you're trying to sell it and struggling, please give me a call. We may well be interested. But holiday lets, let's be honest, anyone can rent out a holiday let, or you should be able to, in July, August, Easter, Christmas. If you can't let it in those periods, then there's something severely wrong. It's the shoulder months. So when we talk about location, you need to look for locations where you've got the potential to actually rent it out before the summer period and after the summer period. Maybe in the location that you're looking at, there's some activities. So maybe the activities are golfing or flying or surfing, windsurfing, whatever it might be. There's other major activities in that area that will enable you to, let's take windsurfing, for example. And my son was really into windsurfing, still is. So in our neck of the woods, where I live down in Poole, obviously there's Sandbanks is in my neck of the woods. I don't live in Sandbanks, alas, but pretty close to it. But where Sandbanks is, there is some really excellent windsurfing facilities, isn't there? Well, if you were to sort of buy a holiday let in that part of the world and then go out of your way to target people that are really interested in windsurfing, you're going to find it much easier to actually fill those properties outside of the obvious season periods by targeting those people, because you're in the right location to do so. If it's student lets that you're looking at, make sure that the location, the property is in the right location. One bus route away from the student university, or stumbling distance into the university, so they can kind of roll out of bed and just sort of like stumble into university. But location is so important. If it's a single let, obviously single let locations, they're not going to want to be on the main road, generally speaking. They're going to be more residential with a parking space. I use that analogy in the video. So think about the location and make sure that it aligns with the type of strategy that you're actually looking to work with. So the next one, point number 6, or the tip number 6, is to take action. Now, everyone talks about taking action, and it sounds like such a weak tip. It sounds like it is in no way, shape or form some big mega thing, some big mega tip that I'm sharing there. But the problem that I have with action taking is I've been very fortunate to know a lot of property investors, especially in my role when I hosted a really big property event down on the South Coast for 6 years. And in that period, I had hundreds, if not thousands of people coming through the door wanting to learn about property investing, which is great. Make some fantastic friends. Don't do that anymore, but it was a wonderful period of my time. And lots of people came in with a real desire to learn how to invest in property, which is wonderful. And hopefully we were able to really help those people. The challenge is that in the nicest sense of the word, many of those people will come along to that event month after month after month after month after month. And I really struggled with this, because what they weren't doing is they weren't taking really discernible action. They weren't getting out there and doing the stuff that they should be doing. Now, we all know what action we should be taking. I don't want to turn this into a lecture. It's just it's my nemesis, really. Ultimately, it's in the action taking that you're going to be able to secure some great deals. And if you focus so much of your time on the learning bit and you don't take the action, then you're not going to do the deals. And all I want is for the wonderful, wonderful subscribers that I have to get to that magical place where the income coming in is greater than the money that's going out the door. And it is a magical place. And you're not going to get there unless you go out and take the action. So one of the things I mentioned in the video that I would love anyone watching this video to do is to make a commitment to go out and see 10 properties next week. Now that sounds, if you're working a full-time job, going to see 10 properties next week may sound almost impossible. But you know what? With real organization, it could be done. You could go and see them after work, going to see properties when the estate agent isn't showing you round. Again, with no disrespect meant to any estate agents watching this, but going to see a property when the estate agent isn't around is a wonderful way to build a genuinely warm and sincere connection with the owner of the property. And ultimately, it's them that's going to decide whether they're going to sell to you or not, isn't it? So could you maybe go and pull out 10 properties, even if you're working full time, that is, and go and see 10 properties next week? I'd suggest most people probably could, even if it was on a Saturday or a Sunday. And you know what? It's fun. My wife and I went to go and see one in Bournemouth last week. And to be honest with you, we didn't go for it. But it was great fun just looking around it. The real potential there. The reason we didn't go for it is there was a queue of people wanting to get in this property, and there was no way we were going to be able to kind of secure the kind of deal that we wanted to secure. So it's about the action taking and ultimately getting out and going to see properties, going to walk around your investment area. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I encourage people to do. Honestly, within a mile of where you live, unless you're in the middle of nowhere, unless you're in a really rural part of the country, within a mile of where you live, I'd be willing to promise you there is an incredible deal waiting for you to snap up, waiting to be snapped up by you, but you just haven't noticed it yet. And so one of the biggest things I encourage people to do is to get out and walk around their investment area and look for places with real potential. Stephen's got down here, he just asked me a question. He's got down here, what would you say to the estate agent? Just that you may be interested. So I'm thinking you're probably referring to that idea, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, of going to see the property outside of hours, if that's what you're referring to there. If it isn't, correct me, but if it is, let's imagine it was. How do you actually get the agent to let you go and see the property outside of normal working hours? Because of course they don't want to come out at 7 o'clock in the evening, do they? Here's a really good tip for you. Whether you're a guy or a girl, you would speak to the agent and you'd say to the agent, look, hi, Dave. Let's call the estate agent Dave. Hi, Dave. Look, to be really honest with you, this particular property, it looks really interesting, actually. What I think I'd like to do is I'd like to go and see it with my partner. And unfortunately, my partner can only make it in the evening or on Saturday or on Sunday. What's the chances of having a chat to the seller and seeing if we can maybe go on over and see it on this evening, say? All the seller would have to really do is just to open the door and, you know, just allow us just to have a little walk around the property. Might that be possible? Do you think they'd be willing to literally just open the door and let's have a little look around? Well, what's the agent going to say to that? No. Well, they're not going to say no. If you've made it clear that you can only, or your partner can only go over, and it could be a business partner, it could be a relationship partner. To be honest with you, the agent's probably going to be too polite to ask whether it's a business partner or a relationship partner or whatever. That's not really the point. The agent is not going to say no, I would suggest, if you made it clear that you can't go out and see it during the day. They're going to say, well, let me speak to the seller. And the seller's probably, because you should be targeting properties that are hopefully motivated sellers, people that are genuinely wanting to sell their property. The seller's going to say yes, aren't they? So that's a really good way of actually going out and seeing properties and maybe going in that property and sitting down with the seller and having a cup of tea. I've got to be honest and say I'm kind of in my comfort zone there because as a kitchen salesman for about 21, 22 years, I'm in my comfort zone, sitting in a kitchen, having a cup of tea and a nice chat. I do appreciate that for some people that's going to be more challenging. And the thing I would say to you there is you don't have to buy this property. Dare I say, they do have to sell it. So keep that mindset in mind when you're actually in with the seller, and just have a chat. You're not trying to be anything that you're not trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not. You're just going to go in and have a chat. So sorry, I'm genuinely not very good at this live stuff, am I? I'm waffling like mad there. I do apologize, but hopefully that made sense. Overdosed Raccoon, what a fantastic name. Love your content, super useful. My question is, what do you think of shared ownership sales? That's a brilliant question. I have to be really careful when I answer questions. I was advised by this by a really senior guy. I have to be careful because I'm not actually allowed to give you any financial advice. And quite rightly so. I'm not qualified to do so. So when we talk about shared ownership houses, I have to be a little bit careful because we're sort of moving in the direction of financial advice here. But can I say this to you? I think I cannot see any huge downside to shared ownership houses. However, I know that, as I say, within a mile of where everybody lives, there are incredible deals. Now, and some of these may well not be on the market at the moment. That's the truth of the matter. Most of the deals that I've found were not on the market. I did my marketing to get directly to the seller. And as a direct result of that, I was negotiating with the seller. The reason I say that is because if I was looking at buying a first property, say, I would be focusing on targeting people that have been on the market probably for a long, long time, and trying to get in the front door with them, having a chat to them, and constructing a win-win deal with the seller. And there's lots of things that we can go into here that would enable you to get an incredible deal as a potential first-time buyer, but maybe not have it as a shared ownership type deal. That probably hasn't really helped you very much, has it? What I would say to you is this: go and watch that mini course that I did, which is completely free. Just go to yourfirst4houses.com/mini course. It is coming down soon because I want to redo it, because I'm a total geek and I wasn't happy with some aspects of it, but there's lots of it. There's some really good stuff in there. Go and watch that. And I honestly think you might change your view, dare I be so bold to say it, when it comes to shared ownership, because there's some really awesome ways that I share in there where you can get great deals without having to do the shared ownership bit. Does that make sense? And I love Overdose Raccoon. That is a fantastic name. DMC Gaming, should you buy at auctions or Rightmove? Auctions. Well, it's really interesting. Auctions can be, obviously, a great place to buy properties. However, I actually know a number of people whose strategy is to buy properties at a big discount, and then they throw them into auctions to make a profit. A good friend of mine, I won't name any names, that's what he does. And so the lesson there is there are better deals potentially not in an auction room. I've got to be, again, this is my first ever live YouTube video, so I'm feeling YouTube broadcast, so I'm feeling my way the whole way here. So I'm not sure what I should be saying, what I shouldn't be saying. You have to be really careful actually thinking about it. I'm not trying to put down auctions. Auctions can be a great source of potential deals, of course they can. However, I think getting out there and trying to connect directly with sellers is a better way of doing it. People where you're not competing with 50, 60, 70, 100 other people in the auction room. Does that make sense? So auctions can be a great source of some types of deals. What is a better way to approach the auction front is to seek out the deals that didn't go through at auction. Now, if you go, what do I mean by that? Imagine how motivated a seller is. Imagine how motivated a seller is. They got to the point, and it could be a commercial, it could be a building society, it could be a seller, whatever it is. They've got their property in auction. Now, for whatever reason, it doesn't sell in auction. I want you just for a moment to put yourself in the shoes of that person. Imagine their mindset right now. It didn't sell at auction. Where are they going to go? They're out of options to a large extent, aren't they? They're the people, talking about auctions, they're the people you should be connecting with. My goodness me, could you make a fortune by, if you were to just focus on that one strategy? Don't do it in my neck of the woods, though. There's no deals in Bournemouth, no deals in Poole. Don't work. Go away, in the nicest sense of the word. But imagine if you focused on that strategy outside of Bournemouth and Poole. Wow, you would find some incredible deals. Anyway, so also another question: should you rent or sell property? And also another question: should you rent or sell property? To be honest with you, DMC Gaming, I'm not really too sure what you mean there. If you want to elaborate, maybe I can help with further on that one. How can I find a property that is not on the market? Okay, that is a brilliant question. Wow, there's so many ways that you can find a property that's not on the market. So many ways. Let me think of some really good examples. So let's take some really obvious ones. Leafleting. You could put postcards in shop windows. You could do Facebook advertising. Maybe do a Facebook advertising campaign where you're going to give away a solution to somebody who's got a real challenge or a real problem, but they're not currently on the market. So that's a really good way of doing it. Do you know what? If you go and check out that course, the online property, so if you go to yourfirst4houses.com/mini course, it's a completely free course. That won't cost you a penny. Go and do that. That will give you all of the answers to that question, if that's okay. So Josh Herford, hi Tony, been watching your videos for a few months, very informative. Thank you, Josh. You mentioned you previously conducted courses. Do you still host these or intend to resume? So I used to host the Bournemouth Property Investors Networking event down in Bournemouth, pretty obviously. I did it for 6 years. I loved every second of it. That was the event that I used to host. Based events, which I love doing. What I do now is I tend to go out and talk on the circuit a little bit, which I always love doing. Should be doing more of it, if I'm being really honest with you. What my wife and I are going to be doing is we're going to be going away and we're going to be using it as an excuse to get away for a weekend, which I thought would be a really nice idea. Anyway, let me get on to my last one. And if you've got any other questions, just keep dropping them into the chat box. And I'm happy to stay on for a bit longer if that's okay. If you've got any other questions, just drop them on there. That's all right. So, well, in fact, to be honest with you, we're on to the last one. And it's a quick one, which is, bear with me 1 second. So the last question is, or rather the last tip is, it's regarding house price rises. And the tip is this: when you go and look at a deal, let's imagine it's a fairly box standard property, nothing particularly exciting. I would love you to ask yourself this question. And the question is, would you buy that property if it was never going to go up in value? And if the answer is yes, you should do the deal. If the answer is no, you shouldn't. No, if the answer is no, you should think again. Not necessarily don't do the deal, but you should think again. What I mean by this is, when I talk at events, or when I was running that property event I was mentioning earlier, people would often come up to me and they would ask about specific properties. They'd often come up and they come up with a piece of paper in their hand or details on Rightmove, and we'd look at the property, and I would, and they would be basing a lot of their decision-making process, whether they're actually going to buy this property, based on the fact they presumed it would go up in value. So surely we're all aware that where we're currently at in the market is a very unusual place, isn't it? Can any of us really predict where the property prices are going to be in the next 6, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years? I'm going to say I can't predict it. And I know a lot of really far, far cleverer people than myself, way beyond me, intelligence-wise, when it comes to property. But I'd say they can't really predict it either. They can guess. We can all guess. But if you look at a property and you say to yourself, do you know what? I would buy this even if it never went up in value. I'd suggest that's a really good indicator of a really great deal. And obviously you're going to be basing that decision on the return on investment it's going to probably be giving you, how much money you need to leave in that deal, and obviously the return on investment. So that really kind of covers those 7 tips. As I say, I had loads more, but I just wanted to give you the 7 the 7 ones that I thought were maybe a little bit unusual, but also packed a bit of a punch with the focus on relatively new property investors. So let's have a quick look down and see if we've got any other questions. I hope this has been beneficial. Is this live? Has this worked for you guys? I would love to hear if it's actually worked for you. If it has, I'm going to do a bit more of this, but hopefully with a better background. And I may even put a shirt on, possibly even shave next time for you. How about that? So let's have a quick look down here. I think that DMC Gaming meant, how can you tell if it's more profitable to sell or rent? So let's... I think DMC Game meant, how can you tell if it's more profitable to sell or rent? So I'm thinking that, again, I'm so sorry, I'm probably not quite understanding that. So what I do, again, if you want to just clarify that, that'd be great. But what I do is I have always focused on buying properties, I refurbish them, and I sell them. So I buy the property initially, I refurbish it, and then I'd sell it on. But I'm kind of thinking it's probably not what you mean. So forgive me, it's probably me being a bit silly. Add a bit to that and I'll answer that if I can, no problem at all. What would be the best way on getting the highest rate of return in real estate with a small amount of capital? For example, 30, 40,000. That is a brilliant question. That is a brilliant question. So what would be the best way to getting a highest rate of return in real estate with a small amount of capital, for example, 30, 40,000. Well, okay, so let's look at that for a second. So the first thing I've got to say is that, well, congratulations on having 30 to 40,000 pounds, first of all. That's awesome. However, in most parts of this country, of the UK, and the fact that you've used the phrase real estate, I'm wondering if you're based in the UK. Perhaps you can just tell me that there. 30 to 40,000 isn't a huge amount of money, but it's a good amount of initial capital. So I would suggest one of the first things you need to focus on is making that money work really hard for you. In fact, trying to do deals that actually enable you to increase that amount of working capital. That's the key really here. So you're going to be looking to find places where you can put that money in, you can add some value in some way, you then pull that money back out and some more money besides. Does that make sense? That's what I did. That's what I would do. That's what I encourage other people to do. So do a deal, put your money in, make it work really, really hard for you, and pull it back out again and more besides. So what kind of things could you do? Well, you could look for 1 bedroom. Let's say you've got 30 to 40,000. You could look for 1 bedroom flats, couldn't you? Where your money goes in, 30, 40,000 pounds goes in. Even in my neck of the woods in Poole, you'd be able to probably pick up a flat where 30, 40,000 pound would be your 25% deposit, say, if you're putting in 25%. and the rest of it would be on a mortgage, for example. And then maybe what you do is you would then add a second bedroom. So you're buying a 1-bedroom flat, maybe you're taking the existing kitchen, making that a second bedroom and putting the kitchen in the communal lounge area. You've now got a 2-bedroom flat. You've potentially then added some real substantial value, haven't you? Maybe you take that 30, 40,000 pounds and you break it up into smaller amounts of money and you use options. I don't know if you know what purchase lease options are or purchase options are, but you'd maybe go and seek out big places with really big gardens. You go and have a chat to the owner of those gardens and you would agree to purchase a piece of their land subject to getting planning, for example. You then put an option in place. I'm probably getting a bit complicated here, but I'll carry on. I'll finish the sentence there. You put an option in place to control the property, which is going to cost you a few thousand to get that option in place with solicitors' fees and everything. You then get planning permission. You then add value in that way. Maybe you use your money and you actually work with other investors and actually go and find places that you can actually put your money in together and you can add some real substantial in some way. Do you know what? There's loads of ways that you could add really good value to a property and make that money work really hard for you. Other things that you could do, it depends on your aspirations, but other things you could do is you could simply go and look at doing rent to rents, for example. Again, I'm not sure, this being my first ever YouTube live broadcast, I'm not sure of the knowledge of a lot of people on this YouTube broadcast. So forgive me if some of these phrases don't make sense. But honestly, there's loads of things you could do with that amount of money to get yourself started. Go and check out that mini course, the free one. It's completely free. I mentioned it a couple of times already. yourfirst4houses.com/mini course. Check it out. It will give you a ton of ways that you can make that money work really hard for you. Oh, I'm so glad I caught this stream. Will this be uploaded as a video after? Yay! Sven, that is so nice. Thank you so much. It's my first ever one. Honestly, I know I'm going to click a couple of buttons when I finish this. I'm hoping that it will upload. I've never done this before. This is going to be interesting to see. I'm hoping it will. But thank you for that. It's really kind of you. Levy, you're amazing. Wow, this is so cool. Thank you. Overdosed Raccoon, thanks for answering. We'll be sure to check out your mini course. Brilliant. Second question, if you have time, are there any general ways to increase value of property, e.g. extensions, etc.? So honestly, you've already got the solution in the bag there. Go and check out that mini course. Say completely free, but in the back, I think lesson 2, I go through a whole wheel of ways. Wheel of ways? That sounds terrible. A whole list. I said wheel because I've done it in a kind of wheel format around me. A whole load of ways you can add value. So I won't bore you with them now. Just go and check them out. There's tons of stuff in there. But you know what? Can I just add one thing on that, actually? Because it's a brilliant question. One of the biggest things I think people should be doing is simply, so we talk about all these different ways that you can add value, development over the road from where I live in Poole. Some property investor, what a nice guy, but so annoying in the nicest competitive sense of the word. He has, and it's literally about 4 doors down from where I am. I live in quite a nice area, I guess. And 4 doors down over the road is a huge house, been empty for ages, big side garden to it. This guy, amazing guy, really nice guy, but wow, I did the kick up the backside because I should have. And he's got planning to build 2 semi-detached houses next door, and he's just got planning to build 2 bungalows in the back garden. Now, that will make him probably 300, 400,000 pounds. And I didn't see it. How irritating is that? But the point that I wanted to make there is the reason I mentioned that is with regards to your question, general ways to increase the value of a property. 300,000 or 400,000 pounds that guy's going to make. Now you could have entered into let's imagine it's you or me. If I'd have had the foresight to see this place, I could have knocked on that seller's door. In fact, the property was empty, so I would have gone to the land registry for £3. I would have downloaded the title deeds for the property, and in there it would have had the address for the owner of the property. Now, you might think that the address for the owner of the property would be that property, but the guy had moved out many moons before, been empty for quite a while, and so on the title deeds for £3, I got this. He could have got this address. In fact, I got the address. He was living elsewhere. So for the £3, you or me could have written to that guy, £3 plus the cost of a stamp, and said, look, here's the situation. Your property's been empty. It's worth X amount. It's probably worth, I don't know, let's say it's worth 600-700 grand as it currently stands, because it's quite a big plot with a house on it. You could have said, here's the deal. I will buy this property for slightly more than it's worth today, if you'll allow me to go for planning. I'm going to put an extra 50 grand. You've been trying to sell this property, haven't you? Yes, I have. Well, you're not getting any offers on it, are you? No, I'm not. I'm willing to give you £50,000 over and above what you're asking, if you'll allow me to go for planning permission. What are they going to say to that? They're going to say yes, aren't they? So there's a really good example of a way that you could make a small fortune. Because don't forget, what I'm saying is you'd only go for planning. You just go for the planning bit. You wouldn't build it out. Just a paperwork exercise. Go for planning with an option in place. You'd have to have an option in place on this. That's going to cost you a small amount of money, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever, depending on who you deal with, so that it's secured. So you then have the right to buy the property over a set period of time. That's what an option agreement is. You have the right, but not the obligation, to buy this property. It's a simple contract. Any solicitor can do it for you. Not any. Most can, though. But there are specialists. And you could have put an option on that property and made a small fortune by simply selling it on to somebody else. You wouldn't actually... I'm getting really technical now, which I didn't want to do. You'd have to make the option assignable so that you can move it on. Anyway, way too much information. But check out that course and you'll find all the details there. I am aware I'm starting to waffle, and I'm sorry about that. Okay. I absolutely love the lives. Do it more often. Thank you. I will. Thank you. Definitely enjoyed the live stream. Thank you. That's really kind. What I meant was, you refurbish property. Is it better to sell it or rent it? I'm with you. I'm sorry. Yes, of course you meant that. Of course you meant that. That's me being a bit silly. What I mean is, what return on investment is better than selling? I still don't feel like I'm making any sense. Sorry, you are. I do understand. You've done the deal. You're buying the property. Is it better to rent it out, or rent it out for the long term, or sell it and pocket the money, which is what I used to do? So, okay, I can give you a great answer on that after I've had a slurp of this. Is it better to rent the property out and hold it for the long term, or sell it and pocket the money? So here's the truth. I used to sell it and pocket the money. And what you get is this real buzz, because you've made a big lump of money in your back pocket, and you can go and have an amazing holiday or whatever. And that was a real buzz. But the problem is that you've got to go and do it again. And then you've got to do it again, haven't you? My guidance would be to do deals that enable you to pull all or most of your money back out of the deal, but by refinancing that property, but keep the property. Because the thing is, although I mentioned earlier, we don't know where house prices are going to go, and I don't believe anyone can say they know where the house prices are going, but I do feel very strongly that in 10, 15 years' time, let's say 10, 15 years, and I'm 25 now, I do feel that in 10, 15 years' time, house prices are going to be higher than where they are now, aren't they? I can't give anybody any guarantees. It's a judgment call, but I think it's a pretty good judgment call, isn't it? Therefore, I don't want to lose that asset. I want to hang on to that asset for the long term, maybe pass it down to my children. Although if my children are watching this, you never heard that. I think you should hang on to it for the long term. But that's not the case with all deals. With some properties, you would want to flip them on. You would want to do that. So I think that it's a little bit difficult to make a judgment call on it. I guess it comes down to cash flow. Ultimately, if you've got a great property that's giving you a fantastic cash flow, like one of mine gives me a cash flow after all expenses, bills, voids, everything of about 35 grand. Another one gives me a cash flow after all bills, expenses and voids and everything of about 25 grand, say, well, I'm going to hang on to those, aren't I? Because they pay for my food and my living expenses and so on. Does that answer your question? It's a great question. I hope that helped you with that one, if that's okay. So what ways can you maximize rental income from HMOs? Brilliant, Sean. In case anyone's not aware, HMOs is a house of multiple occupation. There's loads of ways that you can maximize the rental income. I think that if you go onto spareroom.co.uk, spare room is the place where everybody tends to rent out rooms, don't they? That's the place where if you're not aware what HMO is, HMO is a house of multiple occupation. Probably most of the people watching this live video will be aware of what that is. Basically, you have a house, and rather than renting the house out to one person, you rent the individual rooms out separately. There's a lot of legislation that's involved in this. I think personally, all of the legislation is a good thing. That's my view on it, because I've walked into HMOs that you would not believe. It was disgusting, some of the properties that I've walked into that were working as HMOs. So I think legislation is a good thing. And so how do you maximize it? Well, I think if you go onto spareroom.co.uk, which is where all landlords advertise their rooms for rent, generally speaking, go and look at some of those adverts. So you'll find an advert. This is from somebody who's trying to rent a room where they're showing a bare empty room with a mattress, without any sheets, pillows, no finesse. And then you've got another room, which might be in the same building for all they know, or next door, whatever, where a professional has gone in and photographed that room after it's been fully staged, decorated and everything. Looks amazing. That is a great way of actually getting an extra 30, 40, 50, 60 or more £100 per room on an ongoing month-by-month basis, potentially. En suites is another way of doing it. I try to put on, I suggest to people they always put en suites where they can into their rooms. And I know that I've got flack for that. And I know it's not always possible. But in a perfect world, if you can put en suites in, often one of the big arguments for people not putting en suites in rooms is that they say, well, if you put an ensuite in a room, like a downstairs room, what would have been a lounge, for example, well, you could never sell it as a house again. Well, here's the thing. Let's imagine the world caved in and everybody was trying to get rid of their HMOs and turn them back into houses. How much would it actually cost you to rip out that HMO and turn it back into a room again? 500 quid, maybe, to rip out the ensuite, the stud walls, redecorate, replaster. 500 quid, maybe a few. I think that ensuites is obviously the way to go, personally. And certainly as more and more people come into this market, I think it's getting to a point fairly soon where people are going to start to only really be looking for ensuite rooms. Certainly as we move forwards over the next few years, I think if you haven't got en suites, then I think that it may become more challenging, shall we say, unless you're in a wonderful location. It may start to become more and more challenging because there'll be more and more choice out there for people with ensuite bathrooms. So what have we got down here? You should definitely do more Q&As. Thank you. I have a tenant who wants a longer contract than a year. Should I do this, or what am I allowed to do? So I would suggest that Why would they want a tenant for longer? Why would they want a contract for longer than a year? I'm going to be honest and say, if I had, again, I'm only stalling here slightly because I had to be really careful what guidance I give, because I don't want to mislead you in any way. Here's my view on that. I wouldn't personally do a contract longer than a year. I wouldn't do it personally. I would build up a fantastic, and if you've got a tenant who is who looks like they're an amazing tenant, you can do everything to make sure they know that they are welcome in your property, that they know that they've got a place in your property. You can look after them. You can do everything, can't you, to make them feel really welcome. But don't give them. This is just my personal opinion. Don't give them longer than a year's contract. This is just my personal opinion, because I want to know that I can get them out of that property should I want to do so. In fact, to be really honest with you, I just give 6-month tenancies. And I don't really see why anyone would worry about that, if I'm being honest. If they're a good tenant and you are obviously a professional landlord and you clearly don't have any intention of selling the property, I don't see that they've got anything to worry about, to be really honest with you. If you want a really factual answer to that question, though, and you're not already a member of the National Landlord Association, can I strongly encourage you to join? The NLA, National Landlord Association, is awesome. And whenever I have any technical questions, I just go straight to those guys. They're amazing. Okay. Yes, thank you so much for the great advice. You're welcome. They like the area and want to bring their son up there and do some changes to the property. Do some changes to the property? That's an interesting comment. They like the area. That's wonderful that they like the area. They want to bring their son up there. That's wonderful they want to bring their son up there. They want to do some changes to the property. That's brilliant. Oh, what changes would they want to do to the property? I confess, I don't like people painting my properties. I even struggle slightly if they're putting blue tack on the walls. But that's only because my experience is that, let's take the decorating. You're talking about changes to the property. I'm not sure what those changes would be, but let's just look at decorating. I've had people that said that, oh yeah, we'll decorate that room, we'll make it look really amazing. And then I go there and they've got paint all over the light switches. They sloshed it all down the skirting board. And I look at it and I go, why have you done that? I don't allow people to modify properties in any way. I bring in professional people. My decorator is amazing, and he charges about 100 quid a day, 120 quid a day, depending on what he's doing. And he's amazing, and he'd crack through a room in no time at all. So yeah, it's the bit that's worried me there is, and do some changes to the property. So I would suggest not. That's just my personal view. If you want to ask the National Landlord Association if they've got any specific legal reasons why not, then I would suggest doing so. Can I ask a question? What is your opinion on obtaining a deposit and feeling you will never get there, even 10 years on, etc.? P.S. Loving the Q&A. Thank you. Can I ask a question? What is your opinion on obtaining a deposit and feeling you will never get there, even in 10 years on, etc.? P.S. Loving the Q&A. So I'm thinking what you're saying is that you can't build up a deposit. So that's a great question. And I'm going to make this probably the last one because I think it's a brilliant one to end on. I know so many people who started off with zero money. So if we're talking about property investing here, let's just talk about property investing. If it's for yourself, it's the same kind of thing. But let's just talk about property investing. I know so many people who started off with zero money, and 1 year later, they built themselves a big portfolio that's cash flowing in excess of £100,000 a year. And they did it from a standing start with zero money. Now, I haven't got the time to really go into how they achieved it. And this is not one person. This is many, many people. Ultimately, it comes down to maybe 2 or 3 things. Let me give you the obvious things that it comes down to, though. And it sounds weak when I tell people this. It comes down to them having a massive reason why a massive reason why they want to make a change to their life. And I had a massive reason why I wanted to make a change to my life. And I'll maybe share that another time. But it's those people that have a massive reason why, and sometimes you have to reach inside yourself and really search for what is your big, big reason why. And sometimes it's difficult to find it. So sometimes there's really obvious reasons, aren't there? Sometimes it's difficult to find a reason why, but you need a massive reason why, because you need to get out there and do the action. Do you remember we talked about earlier on taking action? Taking action isn't going on to Rightmove for half an hour a day and looking for deals. Taking action is getting out there. It's walking around your investment area. It's about going in and speaking to estate agents. It's about getting on the phone and phoning 10 agents again and again and again. It's about putting content out there. If you do all that stuff, the reason why bit, you'll get there. You will get there. It might be that you get there through the medium of other people's money investing with you. It might be that you simply start getting really good at finding deals, and then you start to sell those deals on, and you start to build a deposit that way. I paid somebody £10,000 once for a name and a telephone number and an introduction, and the deal made me quite a lot of money. It's all above board, all done, legitimately above board, but it made me a lot of money. I was happy to pay this person £10,000. If you talk about finding deposits, for example, if you get good at finding deals, there'll always be people out there that will buy them from you. I'll buy them. Or if I don't, I know a lot of people that would, and you could do that. You could go to meetings and property events and sell deals. So the finding of the deposit bit, the reason why is so important. It's the thing that gets you up in the morning. It's the thing that enables you to get out of your comfort zone and start finding deals. And so find that reason why, maybe dig a little bit deeper, and you will make it work. I did, and I am most definitely nothing special. Ask my wife. I hope that was of some help. I've really enjoyed doing this. I've just gone over the hour, and I don't want to bore you guys for too much longer. Hi, Tony, and thank you for the email you sent me with regards to the course. I will definitely do the course when I graduate from university and have the money to buy the course. That's awesome. Thank you. The fact that you're actually live is fantastic. Thank you so much, Ice Queen. That's really cool. Great name, by the way. Oh my God, I tried for the last year and it's not happened. 3 properties fell through and still trying. I have a huge why too. TJE, that's just awesome. What I'm going to say to you there is education is maybe something that you need to look at. There are so many ways that you can find great deals. They're all around us. Education is worth looking into. I'm going to be really, really cheeky and end by saying, check out my onlinepropertymasterclass.com page. It is a fantastic course. It's at a hugely reduced price at the moment. I've chucked a lot of stuff in there. onlinepropertymasterclass.com. Check it out. If you did that course, it will give you pretty much everything that you need in order to be successful. I didn't mean to end on a plug. I apologize about that. I hope that you found this live YouTube beneficial. I've really enjoyed doing it. And thank you so much for spending the evening with me. And I will do another one again. Thanks ever so much. You take care. And that's just been great. Thank you. Thank you.